Hello, you are on the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world as of June 19th, 2025. A large number of events have taken place today, so let's get started. It really feels like the front south and southeast of Constantinovka has completely collapsed. This is primarily the Klebanbek pocket. Apparently an encirclement has formed there, so let's move to the line of contact. We have a lot of interesting updates and news. Let's begin. And we'll start with the most important direction, the Constantinovka sector of the front, from where we are receiving a huge number of geolocated reports, as you can see. Let's go in order and begin with the Klebanbek direction. Today, mapmakers have published individual updates on their maps around the settlement of Stupochki. Let me remind you that the Russian Ministry of Defense reported 2 to 3 to 4 weeks ago that Stupochki had come fully under the control of the Russian Federation. So even back then, we marked the settlement as fully controlled by Russian forces. And today, we are receiving footage and geolocations from the village itself, once again confirming the Russian presence. We also see that slightly south of Stupochki, in the area of the settlement of Predtechino, active combat is ongoing. The Russian army is advancing, drones are operating. So at this point, Stupochki appears to be well behind the front line. The Russian army is storming toward Constantinovka, but the battles for Predtechino aren't the most important. What matters here is the high intensity of combat operations. The most significant updates today are coming from the southeast, from the Klebanbek pocket. We've been discussing this section of the front daily, as there are continuous developments and updates. To visualize it clearly, let's go over the dates again. The active offensive phase began around June 14th to 15th. At least on those dates, we saw the highest number of updates. This is what the map looked like by the evening of June 15th, 2025. By June 16th, Russian forces had improved their positions along the Seversky-Donetsk-Donbass Canal, crossed it, and began storming a network of strongholds along the tree lines leading toward Belaya Gora. By June 17th, there were reports of a flanking maneuver by Russian troops around the railway station in the area of southern Dylayevka. There are geolocations confirming this maneuver. By June 18th, Russian units reportedly cleared southern Dylayevka and the railway station, advancing along the railroad toward the settlement of Alexandra Kalenova. And today reports indicate that the Russian army has cleared central Dylayevka. There are geolocations confirming the presence of Russian units along the tree lines around the village, and Ukrainian FPV drone operators are striking those positions. There is also information that all Ukrainian strongholds southeast of Belaya Gora have been eliminated. In summary, the first stage of the Russian offensive toward Constantinovka from the southeast appears to be complete. This objective was achieved by cutting off the pocket that existed between Dylayevka, southern Druzhba, Azaryanovka, and Kurdyumovka. The entire salient has been eliminated, and the front line has been straightened. It's difficult to say what the Russian army will do next. But if the offensive continues, the next stage will likely involve leveling the front line along the settlements of Toretsk, Alexandra Kalenova, Belaya Gora, and of course, Chasiv Yar and Ivanivske. That would be the second red line, and possibly the next phase of the Russian advance. The only question is whether Russian forces will launch that phase immediately, as in today, or whether they will regroup and take a short operational pause to bring up reserves before moving forward again. It's hard to say, but it looks like they may start advancing right away. We're also receiving very important geolocated footage from the settlement of Alexandra Kalenova. For a long time, we considered this area a grey zone, contested territory. A few weeks ago, there was footage of Russian motorcyclists entering the southern part of Alexandra Kalenova under heavy Ukrainian artillery and FPV drone fire. At the time, we marked the southern part of the village as under Russian control, while the area further south remained grey. The implication was that the Russian motorcyclists had managed to break through and hold positions in the south, while the main forces were still advancing toward the village. Today, however, we have critical footage from objective surveillance confirming, apparently, full control over the territory south of the settlement. Let's take a look at this footage. The importance of this video is that it doesn't show infantry charging in or individual Russian soldiers under drone strikes, or even motorcyclists trying to push deeper north. Instead, we see armored vehicles. Armored vehicles are entering the settlement of Alexandra Kalenova, and that is the most important proof that Russian forces now control virtually the entire Kleban-Beek pocket. The vehicles roll in, Russian paratroopers dismount and take positions along the tree lines. Everything is clearly organized. Each unit knows where it needs to be. If you look closely at the footage, you'll see the last recorded point. Russian soldiers jumped off their armor and secured buildings located just west of the area. Based on this footage, we are making a significant map update. And what do these positions now indicate? They show that the current distance between the forward positions of the Russian army and the H-20 highway, the only remaining supply route that can be used to support Ukrainian forces in the areas of Katerinivka, Kleban-Beek, Sherbinivka, and Novospasivka, is now approximately 770 meters. In other words, the Russian army has now physically established control over the H-20 highway in the area of Alexandra Kalenova and Yablonivka, as well as over a portion of the O524 road that leads from the H-20 toward Katerinivka. That's it, the road is physically cut. I am confident that the Ukrainian side has lost the ability to use it to supply their troops inside this pocket. Maybe some infantry is still moving across fields near the Kleban-Beek reservoir, trying to stick close to it, but that's no longer full-fledged supply, just desperate attempts to buy time. We will, of course, continue to monitor how the situation develops, but let me also remind you that similar operations are now being carried out by the Russian side to the northwest of Donetsk, where Russian units are trying to get as close as possible to the reservoir. But even the current distance there is already enough to establish mortar and FPV drone control. So today we can confidently say that the Russian army has likely created an operational encirclement for the Ukrainian units located in this pocket, made up of 4 settlements. From this point on, this front section becomes a supply liability for Ukrainian forces. They now have to pour in equipment and personnel under constant heavy Russian fire if they intend to hold on to this corridor for any length of time. But it's hard to say what will happen here, because this is the kind of situation where missing the right moment could mean that withdrawal becomes impossible altogether. We'll keep watching. Russian forces are already positioned near the Kryvyi Torets River and the railroad line. Strikes are being delivered. So now, having established an operational encirclement, possibly even a full cauldron, Russia has started attacking the positions along the Kryvyi Torets River and the railway. Drones are active, equipment is being destroyed, and this pocket is being prepared for assault and gradual tightening. In effect, the Kleban-Beek pocket has ceased to exist as a defensive unit. It's done. It's only a matter of time before this pocket is fully cleared. Of course, the Ukrainian side may attempt a series of counterattacks, possibly toward Alexandra Kalenova again, or toward the northwestern outskirts of Donetsk. But for now, we see that such counterattacks are not taking place. Let's move on now and discuss the situation in the southern Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk directions. Today, we're also receiving a large amount of important news. The Russian Ministry of Defense has reported that the center group of forces has fully cleared the settlement of Novonikolayevka. So based on this report, we made a small map update in the west. We marked the remaining areas of Novonikolayevka as under Russian control. And now reports are coming in that Russian troops have entered Moravka. Some independent cartographers have already marked it on their maps. There is a high probability that tomorrow the Russian Ministry of Defense will officially confirm the clearing of Moravka. This flank is producing some very important news. Moravka, Novonikolayevka, Novoserhiivka, and further toward Udakne. We are also receiving reports of successful Russian assaults in the area of Udakne. Why is this area so important, and why should we pay attention to it? First of all, we haven't received updates from here in a very long time. A major regrouping has likely been taking place here, possibly involving logistical preparation. But the most significant news from this area isn't even about frontline combat. It's that yesterday, the chief of the Russian General Staff, Gerasimov, flew in and conducted an inspection of the center group of forces. It's likely that yesterday he gave final instructions to the command of the center group, and today they are beginning to execute those orders. Apparently, those orders involve entering the Dnipropetrovsk region from this section of the front with the objective of advancing toward settlements like Mezhova, Serhivka, and possibly beyond. The broader goal is Pavlohrad. That is where movement is currently happening. And again, movement is also underway toward the northern section of the same corridor, slightly north of Alexievka, aiming to cut it off completely. Today, we've seen objective control footage showing Ukrainian units of the 35th Marine Brigade trying to evacuate their equipment and personnel from this corridor. However, Russian drones are swarming the area by the hundreds, leaving no chance for evacuation. Overnight, the Ukrainian side launched several counterattacks near Horokov to try to reopen an evacuation corridor. But as we saw, these counterattacks aimed to prevent the tightening of the encirclement, to hold the jaws of the trap open. However, drones were also active here, and the equipment that tried to break through south of Horokov was destroyed in record time. Meanwhile, the Russian army continues intense fighting in the Zaporizhzhia region, where Ukrainian forces are putting up fierce resistance. Still, it's clear they don't have the time or opportunity to withdraw their troops. Russian drones are all over the area, and if this small bridgehead, Zaporizhzhia, Yalta, and Zirka, is lost, it would allow Russian forces to push into open terrain and continue their advance toward the outskirts of Donetsk region on this axis and further into the Dnipropetrovsk region. Again, this is currently the responsibility of the East Group of Russian forces, but this sector may soon be reassigned to the Center Group, while the East Group continues assaults toward Huliaipol, where heavy fighting is ongoing. Last night, the Russian Ministry of Defense published footage of drone strikes that occurred overnight using Geran-type drones. These objective control videos show several temporary Ukrainian military positions being hit, both in Zaporizhzhia and in the settlement of Volodymyrivka. These strikes reportedly inflicted heavy losses on the Ukrainian armed forces. And that's all for now, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and take care.